Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the newest episode of the Student Alliance Speaker Series from Tigger House Foundation. Before we get into today's topic of discussion for our viewers at home, if you enjoy the content we create here at Tigger House Foundation and would like to see more content from us, be sure to like and subscribe with the buttons down below. Also, follow us on our social media platforms for notifications of the newest episode and to see more content from us. So our speaker tonight is someone very special to me. He happens to be my nephew. Jacob Burns. He is a member of the Rumson First Aid Squad. He is a college student. He's an RFH alumni. He's extremely involved in his community. And Jake, why don't you take it away?
Thanks. So before I start, anytime I talk, it's like telling a story. So always I looked at it, especially when you're talking to a lot of people, there's a beginning, middle, of an end. And that's how a story goes. What's important to realize about where I'm at is that my story hasn't ended yet. It's still going. So when I tell you the events I've been through, I don't want you to look at it where I am now, because that's not how I look at it. I still got more going. But this is how I've gotten to where I am and how I'm looking forward to pushing myself to what is success for me. And I'll get into that as I talk. So my story kind of starts with my upbringing. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm raised in a log cabin or anything crazy, but I was born and raised in Rumson. For those that know Rumson, it's a very prestigious community. Many people think of Wall Street traders or those hot shots in New York. You go over the Rumson Bridge, you'll see boats in that marina that stick out. There's a lot of money in Rumson, and with that comes a lot of stereotypes. A lot of them are true. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a very loving household. My family has been married. My mother and father have been married for years. I think they've just passed their 25th. I have two sisters. I really couldn't ask for anything more. Growing up in Rumson, there was a few paths set out in front of me, which was laid by the community. As I get there, it's important to realize I didn't really stand out in Rumson. I didn't really fit in. In middle school, I had my own lunch table. I had a lot of leg room. I loved it. Personally, it didn't really bother me. But I didn't have a lot of friends. But from an early age, I kind of was isolated from a young age. Looking back, I don't know why. I was youngest in my grade. I wasn't good at sports. It was I just didn't blend, and that led me into high school, where I kind of struggled socially, meeting people. But I came out with a few good friends that I'll get to later. As a student growing up, I was probably my teacher's worst nightmare. I didn't do homework. My total homework grade percentage for my senior year was 2%. I was a B student. I would go to class, I would sit there, I would see what they'd have to say, and I'd pass the test. Almost near a perfect score every time. I was not really entranced by school. School didn't really have much to do with me, but at the time, that's what my community wanted me to do. That's what the path was laid out in front of me. It was, you go to school, you study well, and you go to college. And that's what I did, minus the homework. In high school, I shuffled through. B's mostly. My GPA my senior year was a 3.4, somewhere in that range. My SATs were phenomenal. My ACTs were phenomenal. And it came time to go to college. And at the time, my guidance counselor sat me down and said, well, these are your options. It's this college, or this college. None of which were pushing my range. None of which were crazy. They were all schools I was almost guaranteed to get in. And I did. I got into every school I applied to. And that was the path that was in front of me. It was straightforward. Guidance counselor laid it out just like that. This was 6 years ago. I graduated high school in 2015. And as a senior, you asked me where I was going to end up. I would have said, oh, by the way, I wanted to study biomedical engineering, pre-med. I don't know why. I guess it sounded cool. I had a friend of mine that was involved with a biomedical engineer, and it was enlightening to me. I was intrigued. That's what I want, again, that's what I wanted to do. But if you asked me where I was going to see myself 5 years ago, which is a common question, I would have said in a biomedical engineering lab, probably about moving out, making serious money, and ultimately successful. And those goals were stuff that I saw. It's just because that's what Rumson was about. You go through college and that's what happened. Also, I was dating a girl at the time. You asked me then, I probably would have said married to her. That didn't happen. So college ended and I had maybe 3 or 4 friends I kind of stuck with. And I went and I decided on going to a school called the Catholic University of America. I'm very religious. It's something that instilled morals and values in me that I really hold on to. And at the time, the Catholic University of America offered me a lot of money to go there. And I took it. I went to college and my life changed around instantly. Going with the flow, kind of really having a lot of friends, that isolation I had growing up switched overnight. By the 3rd day in college, there was 63 people outside my dorm room playing cornhole in the hall for something I organized. 63 people. We called it dorm hole. Within a week, one of the fraternities, I'm not going to mention their name, reached out to me and recruited me on their social committee. I became the person I wasn't growing up. I became the hot shot. Everyone knew me on campus. My reputation superseded me. I was the king of networking at my campus, and I stood out. Looking at it, I grew up. There's a floor called Father. That was my dorm. Father, floor 3. I held the reputation. People know me as the Father guy. I had a group of 30-something friends that I were in and out of my room constantly. They would come to me about social advice. They would come to me about girl problems, fraternity events, so-and-so. And I excelled. I was a name for myself. It made me feel as if I had this life that kids dreamed of. The stereotypical college lifestyle. I loved it. As a student, it was different. It wasn't the same school I was used to where I could go to class and kind of sit there and absorb information and then just pass a test. There was assignments. There was a lot of work on my shoulders that I wasn't ready for because I didn't do homework in high school. It just wasn't something I was used to. And I started struggling a little bit. It started having to work harder. But that's the college. That's the path of college. You have to work really hard in college. You go to an institute, you have to push yourself. You have to sacrifice things that you normally wouldn't want to, your free time, your sleep schedule, to get the good grades, to live your lifestyle, and to live this dream college career that I just created for myself. And I was managing. I had I have pretty high grades throughout my first year at CUA until about midterms. Midterms came around and I was probably sleeping about 4 hours a day. My fraternity used drugs. There was a lot of drugs in my fraternity. You name it, it was there. Minus opioids. I never really dabbled in that. Looking back, I was a stupid kid. That's how I see myself if I look back in a mirror. But there was times where I'd go to my fraternity, my buddy would look at me and say, "Hey, take this." And I look at it, and I had some beers in me. I just drinking underage. And I just, yeah, okay. I mean, why not? This is the lifestyle, right? This is college. I'm paying for this. Rather loans were, but screw it. Why not? And I did. I messed around. I didn't really like much. I really just liked drinking and kind of keeping it just at that. But the lifestyle was wearing on me about midterms. I was sleeping 4 hours a day. I was spending most of my time studying with friends in the room, trying to multitask. I had a girlfriend at the time who was very much time demanding. And I started feeling myself kind of spiral. This all kind of accumulated during my 4th day of midterms. That day, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. after going to bed at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. I studied for 2 hours till 7:30. I took a midterm and I passed it. I don't know how, but I did. And then I went all the way across DC to my buddy's apartment to celebrate with quite literally this much scotch. We'll get to that a little bit later. This much scotch is what I drank. I hopped back on the subway, went to my fraternity house to see my girlfriend, to see my friends. Not eating breakfast. Barely awake. I think I slept 15 minutes on the subway, just trying to, nap when I could. And then we met up at my fraternity house and we went to the Priz. The Priz was kind of the community center where we all ate lunch. And outside the Priz are these two massive, not really massive, but staircases. They're about 6 steps each. In the middle, there's a landing. I was walking up those stairs with about 8 friends of mine, all of which knew me very well. And they knew that what I said was usually true. I was not much of a liar. But I was walking up the first flight of stairs. I made it all right. And then I took 2 steps. And I don't remember. But from what I was told, is I took the 3rd step kind of funky. I lost my footing a little bit. I went a little bit, swayed a little bit to my left, a little bit to my right. And my buddy looked at me kind of funny and said, "Hey, Jake, what are you doing?" And I said, "You know what? It's a great Wednesday." I collapsed to my knees and I swung backwards. My back went fully back and I went forwards, not being able to brace myself. My head made contact with the stairs and I was on the ground. At this point in time, my life would change for the rest of my life. This is a moment that defined me to who I am today. Going to get lunch at a community center. I came to on my side a little bit, not myself. My friends describe me as drunk, totally drunk. Being EMT now, I can tell you that what I had was altered mental status, which is a sign of a traumatic brain injury. Rolling over, I wasn't able to really keep my head up. I had a little bit of blood going down my nose, right down the side. Keep in mind, I just fell from standing up. I hit my head on a flight of stairs, and I was just kind of sitting there in and out of consciousness, waiting. One of my closest friends, Matt and Cal, ran over to hit the emergency button on the campus that everyone dreaded, everyone knew about, but no one really knew what happened when you hit it. They hit it, and 5 minutes later, an ambulance comes. Out of the ambulance comes 2 EMTs. These EMTs came by, and they looked at me. They recognized me instantly from the fraternity that I was in. They would come and pick up drunks from that front step every other week, and next to them would be me. At the time, in high school, I was a lifeguard. I do a little bit of first aid, and there I was at the front door, kind of buzzed with people to give to these EMTs. That time kind of recognized me. So these EMTs come up, and they see me on the bench, not being able to keep my head up, bleeding from right between my nose. And the first thing they asked is, "How much did you drink?" They didn't ask for my name. They didn't ask for what happened. How much did you drink? And my friends looked at him. Dude, he didn't drink anything. It's 12:35 in the afternoon. He didn't drink. What do you mean, what did he drink? How much did he drink? And they kept asking him. They didn't go to me. I think they maybe asked me 5 or 6 questions when I was there. That's all it was. And eventually, when I overheard them say, "How much did you drink?" And I looked at them and I said, "This much scotch to celebrate a midterm." I wasn't joking. I was being dead serious. These EMTs looked at that and they thought I was drunk. They made the assumption that I was a college drunk. The frat boy that was living his lifestyle, partying during midterms, and fell the wrong way. They loaded me up in the ambulance and dumped me in the ER. For those who don't know anything about head injuries, is that they're very time sensitive. You need to get help quick. Looking back as an EMT now, they did not do their job. When they went to the ER, they went up to the charge nurse and gave their report like any EMT would. An hour away from the end of their shift, they didn't want to deal with it. So they went to the charge nurse and said, "It's a college drunk. He witness collapsed. He had his head a little bit. There's nothing really more to it. Why don't you just let him sleep it off?" And so that's what their plan was. They came up to me. They assessed me a little. They didn't see anything funky because whatever the EMTs told them didn't really imply it. They let me sit for 8 hours. 8 hours later, I was barely conscious. I was no longer capable of understanding where I was or how I got there. I have 2 memories of the ER itself. One was this nice, jolly homeless man that was next to me trying to stay warm. And he looked over at me and, "Man, dude, you're living the life, huh? Like, how much fun did you have today?" I said, "None at all." Trying to make light of the situation. And the other was one of the reasons I'm still functioning today is a neurologist passing by was looking at me funny. He wasn't there for me. He was passing by for a consult. And what he saw was cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid around your brain, pooling on my t-shirt. Within minutes, I was rushed up to the neuro floor, and I remember something of a big needle being involved, but I woke up 2 days later. That was probably one of the most defining moments of my life. 2 EMTs made a judgment call that made me sit in the ER for 8 hours. When I woke up next to a box of Airheads. Shortly followed by one of my good friends, Matt and Cal, same guy that called the ambulance, giggling, and a doctor coming in about 15 minutes later to tell me the news. I had air in my brain. I was quite literally an airhead. The jokes, my fraternity jokes after were hysterical. I assure you that. But the medical terminology for it is pneumoencephalus. It's caused by massive facial trauma normally. There was an air pocket in my brain that was damaging my frontal lobes. From that day on, I was sleeping 16 hours a day, averaging. That was a good day. My fraternity tried supporting me, but I had to give it up. My girlfriend tried supporting me. I had to give that up too. My full-time schedule of classes that I was doing well in had to drop to part-time. This dream life I've started building myself, this dream college experience that I was living, that most kids in high school have dreamed of. You know, I had the girl, I had the grades, I had the fraternity, everyone knew me on camp. I was the popular guy. Slowly started disappearing. And I don't remember it. Something as silly as a stare. Change that. Fast forward to the end of the semester. I finished the semester without dropping out. I'm not a quitter, something I've never been. I finished with a 72, a 74, and a 70 even, barely passing 3 classes. I made one of the hardest decisions of my life to take the step off this path that was established for me for growing up in Rumson and I dropped out of school. I don't know if anyone knows statistics about college dropouts, but in short, they're not good. Drop out of college, typically you're not going back. I remember that from a speaker that spoke on a foundation just like this that came in RFH. And I was miserable. My life started going down. This time period of my life, I call it the aftermath. It was something that I wish I could remember more of, but for what I remember, I don't want to remember more of. This 16 hours a day was accompanied with memory loss. I would forget I ate dinner. I would go home to my parents' house, which I stayed in, to a dinner on the table. I'd wake up, see the dinner, eat it, go back downstairs, and come up 5 minutes later asking where's dinner. My personality entirely wasn't there. Heavy concussion, barely able to hold a real conversation. My attention was that if you were to have a conversation with me, I would not be paying attention by the end of your sentence. I would have to ask you to repeat your sentence. But that was normal for a head injury. One of the hardest things that kind of stood out for you is in this time, I kind of realized that there's no one like me in my town, in my community. I was the guy that fell out of college. I was the guy that messed up. I was the guy that failed. According to the community path that was in front of me, senior in high school. And I was alone. I was isolated. I was truly by myself. Most of my friends, the few that I had, went off to college. I physically wasn't there. And things that I was able to do that made me happy, surfing, running, sports, I wasn't able to do that. I was by myself. And this time I kind of learned that isolation is one of the most harmful things you can do. And I was miserable. I was going through mental health that was brought on by a head injury that happened by me walking to go get lunch. I did nothing to, if you look at the whole grand scheme, you know, there's all these bad things that happen to good people, and I did nothing to deserve that. It just happened. Life came my way in the form of a stare, and it stuck with me. This mental health, this decline I was in totally lasted for a better part of the year. The reason I was able to come out of it is I didn't come out of it alone. In this time, I had a good friend of mine named Vinny. This guy, Vinny, dropped out of college too. And at first it started as, hey man, what's going on? Like, how you doing? And next thing you know, I'd come home from a neurologist appointment, a psychologist appointment, to find him sitting in my basement wanting to play video games for the hour I could keep my hand up. From Vinny came Joey, and I started finding that I wasn't alone anymore. And not even that, these people were good people that I kept around. In the aftermath, I surrounded myself with good people, and they were able to help me come out. One of the first things I learned in my journey was it's really important to surround yourself with good people. Currently, Vinny's a cop, Joey's an architect, and to this day, I still see them once a week. But I'll move forward in my life a little bit to the summer. I'll buzz this for a second. I gained 50 pounds, not being able to move. I was a lifeguard, and I barely passed my swim attestment. I passed it by 2 seconds. I got a 9:58 on a 10-minute swim. I wasn't able to lifeguard. I had to sit on my own stand away from people because my boss knew I wasn't really capable, but he felt bad about my head injury. And I just was miserable. Um, but I didn't have a way at this point. That path that was established, this line in front of me, was taken away from me. I didn't know what to do. For me, I've always wandered aimlessly in life until this point. I was just kind of going with the flow. This is what was expected of me. This is what people wanted me to do. And it started showing. I had no direction until that springtime, until that fall. In my head injury, I met Rumson EMS squad, which currently I am the captain of. Rumson EMS squad came to my house for calls about my mental health, for calls about my memory, for general issues I had to transport me to hospitals. And it turns out Vinny, this guy that helped me bring out his head injury, his grandmother was the captain at the time. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about being an EMT?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Those a-holes almost killed me." And that was the first introduction to EMS for me. I was so against it at first. I hated everything about it. I didn't want anything to do with it. Until 2 months later. This is November. One of my neighbors comes down the street and asks me if I want to be a fireman. Grudgingly, my mother kind of kicking me in the butt. And I said, sure, why not? And he says, "You should probably be an EMT too." Well, do I have to? And he was like, "Yeah, you probably should." Grudgingly, I went along with it. And then I think right after I said that, it hit me that this is something I could do so no one ever has to live through this, ever. And it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I was still recovering from my head injury when I started the EMT class, and I had to relearn how to learn. Just from what I've experienced already, I didn't really have a good memory, and I was still kind of relearning studying. And I spent hours every day working on this class. I felt out of place. Because no one I knew in my community was doing it. But I kept going at it because it was something to do, something to get moved forward with, until I got to the end of the EMT program. This point in time, I learned about head injuries. I learned about the very thing that took my dream life from me, that took this whole perfect picture of a world out of my reach. And I was motivated. I was so motivated that I took the test with the utmost confidence I was going to pass, and I didn't. I failed the first time I took the EMT test by 1 point. And right about this point is when I realized that I have to take myself seriously. I have to move forward in the direction that I want to go. That I have to work really hard to achieve what I want to do. And I did. I spent 2 months studying 8 hours a day. All medical terminology, everything in that book. I read that book maybe 4 or 5 times. Because I took myself seriously. I wanted it. I wanted it more than I wanted to breathe. Because at this point in time, all I could see was me on that flight of stairs. It couldn't happen again. I took the EMT test again 2 months later, and I got a 98. The one question I got wrong, I went to the state and I argued it. And from that moment forward, I had a drive. I had my own direction. That wasn't a path put in front of me. It was the path I was making. Later on that year, I went through Fire Academy. About midway through Fire Academy, I broke my ankle. I lied to my Fire Academy, and I went through the rest of the academy with a broken ankle. I passed Fire Academy, and I'm a certified fireman. But it didn't stop there. I lost all those 50 pounds. I worked out 3 times a day with a healing broken ankle, to put myself in the best shape of my life. To lifeguard, I was offered a supervisor position because I was an EMT, and I started managing beaches that summer. Before I say anything more, I want to say that my boss here was a character. We didn't get along, but at end result here, he was a good guy, and to this day, that's how I see him. He was a good guy, but I didn't look at him as a good leader. I went into this supervisor position with the whole goal of pleasing my boss, as many of us will do in our life or try to do. And I did. I worked harder than anyone else on that beach. I woke up 2 hours before the start of the day. I would go to work and set up the entire beach, get all the stands set by myself. So when everyone came in, their job was easier. That was the attitude I had. That was that drive that I had from starting to take myself seriously and making my own path. I took over the fire department training program for the beach I worked for. I became an aquatic response rescue team instructor, a USLA instructor. I had the certifications that at one point in time, I was training the Coast Guard in sandhole collapse at the age of 19. I was doing everything I could that my boss wanted from me, looking for his approval. The supervisor role was up in front of me for the lieutenant position next year as a sergeant, and I wanted it bad. So much that I'd stay that hour before turned into an hour after work. My coworkers knew me as the guy that would do the work for them if they weren't able to. I'd pick up shifts. I don't think I had a day off that summer because I took other people's shifts. Until the councilman's son joined the beach I worked for. For those who understand a little bit about town politics, is that some councilmen are in charge of funding for beaches, and it showed. The councilman's son came in an hour and a half late every day, hungover, but popular. He was well known. I don't have bad blood with this guy now, by the way. I do have to emphasize that. Just because he was like that then doesn't mean he's like that now, and I actually have a lot of respect for him. My boss saw this opportunity and gave the position to him. This guy I worked so hard to please and gain his approval for to get this promotion, shattered all this respect I had for him by giving it to someone else. But instead of being upset, something miraculous kind of happened within me. Is I realized that I worked harder than anyone else on the beach, that those extra hours paid off. The police chief knew my name. The mayor knew my name. I wasn't this guy that was just there, the guy that did get the job. I was Jake Burns, the guy that come an hour early before work. And I was happy with the work I put in. This is how I learned that I don't work for other people's approval. I worked for my own. I had pride. I gained pride in my work, and really pushing myself forward. And that's something that I still work toward this day. I treated people kindly, and I worked hard, and I was put in the second lieutenant position of EMS at Seabright EMS. Things just started moving forward. So I guess the next thing I should talk about is my first real job. At this point in time, this is about 3 years after my head injury. I've worked about 8 jobs. Fast food, pizza delivery, construction, masonry at one point. I lifeguarded. I had a long list of just stuff. And in this list, I would work hard. And I started realizing that second lieutenant of EMS, I was a supervisor for public crews. I started moving up until one day my neighbor down the street came up to me and said, "Hey, there's this job going on in for a friend of mine. They're starting a franchise in the area. It's called the Junk Luggers. It's a company that does donations for houses that need to be cleared out." At the time, I was working on an online retail business that I was developing, and I said, "You know what? It'd be good to get the hours. Let me see what I can do." So I took it. I took the job, and my first day of work, I went in to see the person I was going to work with, and the operations manager at the time, whose name was Ed. My first introduction with Ed was a 6'8", 300-pound bald guy that kind of looked like a giant. This guy was terrifying. Turns out he was the assistant manager of Trade Winds when it was a club. This guy has thrown more people out of bars than I skipped by classes. Like, this guy was massive. And he looks at me with this glare, this horror, like this stare that made me like, I'm a pretty guy. I'm 6 foot. I was in shape. This guy made me tremble. And first thing he says to me is, "You got a dog?" This man loves puppies. This man loved everything sweet. If there was flowers on the side of the road, he would literally be like, "Oh, look, that's a tulip." This expectation I have for him just out the window. Turned out to be one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And I started, this junk luggers drive started taking off, and I had the skills for it. And it was eating me up inside how this guy who was so monstrous and had this reputation for a bar back, this bar tosser, Trade Winds manager, is such a teddy bear. And one day I asked him, I said, "Hey, Ed, I gotta ask, how are you like this? You're a nice guy. You work for a service that takes stuff out of an environment where you drove a diesel truck through your teenage years." He admitted he was, he said like, "Oh yeah, I know it's a little underwhelming." But he said he was never like that. And he taught me a lesson that I feel like I have to say here. He lived his life before as if he was on top of it. He wanted to put people down. He was a bully in high school. He admitted to it. He would litter on purpose because it would piss people off. He at one point even joined like some kind of racist committee. I don't want to get too much into that, but he was what we would say today is a bad dude. And he would live that lifestyle for 25 years. So one day he woke up and said, "You know what? I'm wrong." In his late 30s, he decided that he was wrong. And he said, I remember this clear as day, as he looked at me and said, "Dude, it's never too late to say you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to want to do better, because your direction now can be a different direction in 20 years. And that sentence right there radiated with me. It was that direction of me wanting to go to college to be this biomedical engineer to now working at a donation service. And I just stuck to this guy. Me and Ed became really good friends in this service. And this small little ragtag band of 10 people turned into 20, turned into 30, fluctuated, and then back down to 20, and then 15, and then there was a lot of people in and out of it, and I became a supervisor, and my paycheck started getting big. Um, I was kind of happy. I was liking where I was at life. I was starting to succeed in this path that was laid. This path. It was money coming my way, something that people in my town had. It was this respect for working hard that was gained, and something that people in my town had, and I was just so entranced by it, and I was gung ho. And then one day Ed came into work, my friend. We went out a few days before, and I got him into pliables because this man ate like a pig. He had his normal sandwich order was an egg and cheese with extra grease on it, double bacon. I will never forget that massive sandwich. He'd chow the whole thing down and he'd go back for seconds. I was trying to get him to eat healthier, and 360 pounds, 6'8", a little big. But one day he came into work and he wasn't himself. This teddy bear of a man I've learned to love was agitated. He was mean. This guy was no longer the guy I'd have a beer with after work and talk about the job, or the old lady who had the weird retainer that stuck out, or he was different. And I just called him out on it because at the time I was supervisor and he was the manager, and we were doing estimates for jobs. I said, "Hey, dude, you're not like yourself right now. What's going on?" And he said, "Man, I got this arm pain and it won't go away. And I feel really bad indigestion. I had a long night last night. Just leave me alone." And as an EMT at the time, I looked over and I was kind of skeptical. Something wasn't adding up. And I looked over his skin and it was cool. It looked cool. He was shivering kind of, and it's pale and sweaty. And I started adding things up in my head for stuff I learned. And I said, "Hey, Ed, you have a chest pain?" And he said, a little bit, but it'll go away." At that point in time, I realized that Ed was having a heart attack. My friend was in danger, and I didn't want that. So I told him right to his face, and I looked at him as, "Ed, dude, I think you're having a heart attack just by what you told me. Let's go get you some baby aspirin. Let's go to the hospital. Let's get you help." And he was stubborn. He said, "No, I'm not doing that." So we do the first job, and he's not able to lift up the piece of furniture. He's trying to puke, but he can't. And I can see this incident unfolding in front of me. And I look at him in the car after the first job, and I say, "Ed, dude, listen, let's just get some baby aspirin. If anyone knows anything about chest pain, baby aspirin will fix it. Especially if it's a heart attack, it can save your life." "No, dude, I'm not taking that." All right. So I asked to go to Crosby's, get a Red Bull. I go in, I buy baby aspirin, throw it on his lap. "Ed, take these. It could save your life." "No, dude, I'm not doing that." We're driving down the road, going 5 miles per hour. I'm talking to Ed, who won't let me drive. Driving. And this normal conversation we're having where he's a little agitated, starts turning a little weird. He's not acting like himself. And I'm asked about this puppy in his room that he just got this little golden doodle. It was just a puppy at the time. And I was asking about trying to get him some kind of this remnant of the Ed that I know to come out. And mid-sentence, Ed stops talking. And Ed's eyes glazed over and his hands dropped from the wheel. And Ed stopped breathing. At this point in time, I don't really remember it too much, but I had to reach over, throw the car in neutral, and pivot it up a curb and slow it down naturally to wedge it between two telephone poles. We tried saving Ed. I called 911. I did CPR on him. I delivered shocks with an AED myself. And 2.5 hours later in the ER, I heard the doctor come out to his family, his mom and dad, and say, "Hey, Ed is dead." I was broken. someone who I looked up to was gone. This man that taught me that you can change for the better, the guy that turned his path around, started walking his own steps, gave up a career of carpentry for donations, had just died. And I was alone. Again, here I was. But I didn't let that stop. My world didn't stop. I chose to learn from it. I took the lessons that he had to offer me, and I took what he could have done. The whole turning, the lessons he offered me. I was able to take the experience that he had, the good he gave me and the time he had around me, and put it to work. Within a week, I started working harder than I've ever worked. I started managing this business that was in charge of Monmouth and Ocean County in this franchise that's national. And I just pushed myself. The 3 jobs I was working at the time became one. It became this one job, and I put all my time and effort into it to move it forward. And it started paying off. My boss at the time, whose name was Megan, realized it, and soon I became an operations manager of a franchise. I was 21 when I became an operations manager. My job was going up and down counties and estimating houses and looking at it all in the image of Ed, of what was, of this path that he laid out for me. And how just moving forward, keeping it going, driving. 5 days a week of work turned to 6, which turned to 7. And I worked hard for success for Ed. And I was making money. I was making real money. I bought every single surfboard I wanted. I bought a new laptop. I started going to Brookdale classes. Again, I really reached forward. I was reaching for the future that was successful in the eyes of my hometown. I wasn't happy. Matter of fact, I was miserable. Every single day I woke up, I looked at that, I thought, hey, you know what, this paycheck's gonna be great. I'm gonna do this with it. Oh, hey, you know what, this paycheck, I think I'm gonna go to Great Adventure. And who knows, maybe I'll buy out a ride every day on a roller coaster. And I did it. It was great. But I felt empty after. This money that was coming my way, this success that I was generating was meaningless. Because this image of what Ed laid out for me, this idea of changing for the better, to choose your path and really make your own wasn't mine anymore. And I started feeling down. It became a chore to get up in the morning. This newfound attitude that I had to love my life after having a head injury turned into this attitude of, hey, I'm here. It's another day. There's going to be tomorrow, and the weekend may be coming up if I get it. Until one day I looked at that paycheck. It was a big number, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I was defeated the second time in my life. I go back to an EMS call that night, and an old friend of mine, this very popular girl I went to school with, Nicole, comes out on a call and says, hey, what's got your tongue? And I looked at her and I said, honestly, I'm kind of miserable. She said, oh, well, what makes you happy? And I said, you know what? This makes me happy. EMS, being an EMT. What makes you happy? And I thought, what? Firefighting. I love firefighting. I love the idea of helping people, the emergency scene. I learned that emergency services was something that I loved, but I didn't know how to do it. That was not a path that was laid out in front of me at my age. I would have had to have applied at the age of 18 to even stand a chance getting a job, let alone a position. I said, well, what's stopping you? And I thought, what's stopping me? Nothing. I quit my job gradually in the right way. I gave 2 weeks and I started working at a ambulance company, which was another job I've worked in the past. But I worked with my friend, and my quality of life went up. I started realizing that although this wasn't success in the eyes of my community, this was something different. I was happy. Every day I woke up, I was making a difference in someone's life, which is what I wanted to do. I started saving money, my paycheck money up, and I just worked hard. My EMT squad started understanding it, and next thing you know, I'm second lieutenant. Fast forward even more, I'm the captain. I gained out of this anything more than money could have offered. So I gained the understanding of what success was. Success is exceeding your own expectations. Is looking at what you want and saying, am I going to do this? This is the expectations I have, and can I exceed that? And I did. In my eyes, at the age of 23, working at an ambulance company, after giving up a job that was making a lot of money, I'm successful. I've come back from a head injury, an expectation that I thought was impossible. I'm now at school and paying for it out of pocket at Purdue for fire science, an expectation that at the time of my head injury was impossible. I'm happier than I've ever been. And in my friend group, I'm probably the only one. That's what I got for you guys tonight. That pathway I chose wasn't set by my community. It's now set by myself. I'm not afraid to take a step out of the trail and wander off for a bit. This saying, those who've lost their way, is something a lot of people think about. You can find it. You can make your own way. It doesn't have to be what your parents want. It doesn't have to be what society wants, what your town wants. You can go do something crazy. You can go be an EMT. You can go become a fireman. As something as silly as a volunteer squad can get you there. Because at the end of the day, it's on you. You can make your own happiness. And that's something that took me a long time to figure out. But I'm glad I did. At the moment, I shape surfboards. I've started a small business of surfboard shaping with a few buddies of mine, which I don't know anyone else that does. I've owned and sold 2 online retail businesses. I've worked a total of 16 jobs, and I'm the captain of 108 people at Rumson EMS. Wow. I'm humbled from where I am. And I encourage everyone that is watching this or will watch it, find what success is to you. That's what I got.
Wow. Awesome.
Jake, man, that was amazing. I mean, I'm your aunt and I didn't know all of this stuff. That was such an inspiration. Thank you for your honesty and being so candid about your story. I think your message resonates so well with our Student Alliance. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. Does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to ask or say?
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story with us. It's truly inspirational, like Amy said. And I think it's important that you touched on success isn't defined by like a paycheck and happiness isn't defined by that. Because I think sometimes nowadays we get wrapped up in that. So I think it's important for everyone to know like your happiness and success isn't based on a paycheck.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so awesome, Jake. I'm thinking back to kind of my journey, and you know, most recently I was managing the operating room at Riverview Medical Center, and I thrived off of those emergency scenes and getting in emergency surgeries. But at the end of the day, I was responsible for more of on the operations side, not clinically. We were saving lives, but it wasn't like my success. And I just turned 36, so at 34 I resigned, and I'm doing what I love. I'm doing my passion, and I love helping people, and I like being, you know, feet on the street and really getting in there and helping people rather than doing desk work and pushing numbers. And it was cool. I mean, it was an awesome experience. And I think that's, you know, we need to go through those experiences to figure it out. And I also like what you said in the beginning, you know, this is not your end. You know, who knows where you're going to be or where any of us on this call are going to be, or our dreams and hopes. And I mean, you just fully inspired me for the week. So watch out.
Thank you. You know, I mean, hearing that, I think I could speak for Ed, where he out of you for changing your way to find your happiness.
Oh my gosh, I love Ed. Amazing.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I know a lot of, I heard a few of you from Rumson. A special message for you guys, I guess, is I've been there. RFH was 6 years ago for me. I'm 23 right now. I was a senior and I had hopes and dreams at the age of 17 that revolved around me being surrounded by money and power and this success that my parents wanted for me and the community that you're raised in wants for you. It's a very privileged community. Think about what you like doing. Think about what you love. If you don't have that, look for it. Look for it every day in your life. And if you find it, if you're lucky enough to find it in the next few years, go for it. Don't let anything stop you. That's what I wish someone could have told me as a senior in high school or a junior in high school at RFH, because the guidance counselors didn't help.
I want to say thank you. I hope that the students, all of them, we will share this with all of them, listen to what you have to say, because, you know, looking back, and I'm a lot older than you guys, but I think everything you said, it's like, you're almost like a wise man coming back and saying this. But I think it's so true. And I felt that even with my own kids, like being happy is probably the most important thing you can do. And I think that then success comes, right? If you're happy and you love what you do. So I think you learned a very good lesson that many of us don't learn until much later on in life. I wish you so much more success. And I hope that you stay a little bit involved in our program, because I think you have so much to offer to our students. I'd love to hear you speak again. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Jacob.
Thank you.